Let's focus on the issue of news reports that have suggested that the government may cap merchant power rates, and to make more sense of that and what the impact of that on industry will be, we've got GRK Prasad, who's Executive Director at Navbharat Ventures, joining us on the phone line from Bangalore. Now, Mr. Prasad, you will have read these reports that suggest that the government may look at capping merchant power rates. Now, do you see this happening anywhere in the near future?
Well, I think merchant power rates will be a function of what would be the cost of generation henceforth. The way I see it, if at all a cap, if it happens at the distribution company level for purchase of power rather than on any other way. You see, at present also there are cases where the local regulators keep a cap on the rate at which the distribution companies buy power at. Have a cap which is being informally observed from a purely annual revenue requirement perspective. I think that kind of a discipline will continue purely from a regulatory perspective. Nothing to do with the government coming down with a rate or anything like that.
Sure, Mr. Prasad, afternoon. Now, sources are suggesting that it should be sold at 2 rupees per unit vis-a-vis 4.5 rupees per unit. So, assuming that the merchant rates are capped at this level, what is the impact on your company?
Well, I don't think that would come about, very frankly. First of all, the merchant power dispensation is more governed by open access, non-discriminatory open access. So the generator has a freedom to sell power. If the rate is not economical, you would just stop it. And so the whole purpose of capping is more like an infrastructure exercise. So even if there is a cap, it will be definitely in consonance with what is the current cost of generation of power and what kind of return one would expect from a power generator perspective. So I don't see that would impact, the generators in a big way at present.
Sure. Again, but Mr. Prasad, if you could just tell us what the average current cost of generation per unit is, and should the government intervene and sort of start regulating this rate very stringently, should we expect that a lot of power plants will actually become unviable and be forced to shut down?
Well, that's the reality. So long as you depend on, let's say, outsourcing fuel from abroad, like imported fuel cost would actually translate to cost of generation in the region of about 4+ at the present rates. I'm talking about reasonably large-sized power plants. So this is something which I think the government is pretty much seized of. So whatever we are talking about as a regulatory measure will have to perforce take into account these kind of cost dynamics. Without cost dynamics, I don't think any government would be putting any cap. So, from the other point which you raised is whether it would vitiate the viability of certain power plants which are committed to supply at a fixed rate. I think the answer is yes.
Mr. Prasad, deviating from this issue now, in 2010 you acquired the largest coal mine in Zambia, and you have been indicating of late that you're going to rely quite a bit and the thrust is going to be on your international operations. Could you just give us more details on the same?
Well, that's one development which is, catching up very well. The coal mine operations have begun in Zambia. We have established a new coal handling and power plant and processing plant that would be commissioned probably in a couple of months. Once that is operational, we would begin the sales of high-grade coal sales as well. And the power plant works, which are intended for the first phase of 300 megawatt, or I would say at the advanced stage of closure, in the sense the soft side of works, where the key project documents have been executed between the utility and the Zambian company, and government implementation agreement also is in place. We have placed an order for the first phase of 300 megawatt for the purpose of EPC. So, given the timelines of about 3 years, we expect the power plant to come up in FY16 and be operational and give substantial revenue accretion to the group as a whole.
Right, and lastly, Mr. Prasad, in terms of revenue and revenue and profit growth guidance, could you share with us numbers for the current financial year?
No, I don't think we do that. But let me put it this way: next year, that is FY13, we expect the power volumes to be higher. One, on account of higher availability of power plants, existing power plants, and two, on account of the new 64 megawatt coming on stream. And secondly, I expect the merchant power rate to be definitely better than what we have seen so far. Again, purely a function of how the costs have gone up and how some of the distribution companies have started revising tariffs. With this, I think I have to stop because we don't normally give any guidance.
All right, Mr. Prasad, thanks very much for coming in and talking to us about those news reports which suggested that the government could be looking at capping merchant power rates at possibly 2 rupees a unit, which of course, as Mr. Prasad mentioned, makes the whole power generation